Sam kicks off today's game with a forest and a ravenous squirrel. John follows up with a tap canopy vista, while Tom plays a forest and a soul ring. With Extra ending the first turn cycle with a game trail, revealing a forest, alongside Birds of Paradise. The real game now begins, with Sam playing a swamp and far-seeking for a tapped overgrown tomb. He then attacks Tom with his squirrel and passes. John plays a forest, then casts a devoted druid before passing. Tom plays a tapped stomping ground and casts the Dryad of the Elysian Grove. He then plays a second land in Myriad Landscape and passes the turn to Extra. Extra plays a forest, casts a Rampant Growth, getting a tapped island, then taps one more for Currency Converter. He then passes back to Sam. Sam plays a swamp for turn, then plays the duo of Pippin, Warden of Isengard, and Serenus Steelseeker. The turn then goes to John. John plays a Dreamroot Cascade and casts his commander, Miss Bumbleflower, then hands the turn to Tom. Tom first casts Valakut Exploration, then plays a forest, triggering Exploration to exile his top card. Next, he plays a mountain, exiling another card with Exploration, followed by a Spitfire Lagak, cast from the exiled card. He then passes to Extra, with Exploration dealing 1 damage to each opponent in the end step. Extra simply casts Feldorn, Red Wolf Herald, plays a tapped Frontier Bivouac, and passes back to Sam. Sam first casts Knight of the Sweet's Revenge, making a food as it enters. This triggers Steelseeker, adding a Tainted Woods to hand, which he then plays, followed by a Pippin activation to make a food, again triggering Steelseeker. This time he keeps the card on top. Once everything is settled, he passes. John plays a forest, then casts Fathom Mage, triggering Bumbleflower, giving Druid a counter and Extra a card. He activates Druid to add a green, untap, and add another green. With this mana, he casts Arcane Signet, triggering Bumbleflowers, targeting Mage to get a counter, Extra to get another card, and John drawing a total of 3 cards with Mage and Bumbleflower. After resolving the triggers, he gives the turn to Tom. Tom first casts Courser of Krufix, then plays Rockfall Vale, triggering Expiration to exile the top card, Lagak to deal 1 to each opponent, and Courser to gain 1. Next, he casts Green Sleeves Marrow Sorcerer from exile, followed by a forest from the top of his deck, triggering Expiration, Lagak, Courser, and Marrow to make a Badger. Tom then passes the turn, again dealing 1 damage with Exploration. Extra starts his turn by activating Feldorn, discarding a card, and exiling his top card. He casts Dryad of the Elysian Grove, which he just exiled, followed by 2 lands in Command Tower and Sulphur Falls. After that, he passes back to Sam. Sam first casts Parallel Live, then activates Pippin, making 2 food, which triggers Steelseeker, adding a land and putting a card into his graveyard. He plays the added Llanowar Waste, then casts Experimental Confectioner, making 2 more food, again triggering Steelseeker, this time sending a card to the graveyard, followed by a land being added to hand. Wanting a bit more food, Sam adventures Gumdrop Poisoner to make 2 additional food, having Steelseeker leave the card on top both times. His hunger does not end there though, casting Gadriel Gift Giver, making a final 2 food tokens to add to his collection. Having made plenty of nutritious tokens, he passes. John plays a Sea of Clouds and casts Nadu Winged Wisdom, triggering Bumbleflower, targeting Druid and Extra, with Sage evolving and drawing a card. His second spell is a Talisman of Curiosity, triggering Bumbleflower and Nadu, adding a card to hand. Bumbleflower then resolves, giving Mage a counter, Extra 1 card, and himself 2 cards. As a result, Mage also triggers, drawing John another card. He then ends the turn with a Thurming Bird, triggering Bumbleflower on the usual target. Tady to put a land into play, and Mage to draw another card upon resolution of Bumbleflower's ability. Tom plays Talon Gates of Madara, triggering Marrow, Valakut, Lagak, and Courser. Next, he sacrifices Landscape to get 2 tapped forests, once again triggering the usual suspects twice each. Followed by a Bestow of Springheart Nantuko onto Dryad. He plays a forest from the top, triggering Marrow, Valakut, Nantuko to copy Dryad, Lagak, and Courser. With the copy, he is able to play a mountain from the top, once again repeating all the triggers. He then continues to do so, playing a forest from exile, another forest from exile, a Cinderglade, and a Carplusian forest, finally running out of mana to make a Dryad copy. In his end step, Valakut triggers, dealing 6 damage, followed by extra activating Converter to make a treasure before going to his turn. Extra first casts Mina and Den Wildborn, then plays Storm Carved Coast in a forest, followed by a Surly Badgesaur and an untapped Breeding Pool, for which he pays 2 life. Leaving a bit of mana open, he passes back to Sam. Sam starts his one long turn with an Undergrowth Stadium. He casts his commander Camellia the Seedmiser, followed by a Deadly Mirkwood Bat. He then goes to combat, attacking John with Gadriel, triggering her effect to make 2 food. In response, John casts Swords of Plowshares, trying to remove the bats. Bumbleflower triggers on the same targets as always. Tady adds a card to hand, and Mage draws a card. Sam then responds by activating Camellia a total of 3 times, sacrificing a food, triggering Confectioner to make 2 rats, Camellia to make 2 squirrels, and bats to make each opponent lose a total of 5 life. He then uses Camellia again, but with the triggers on the stack, extra chips in with a rapid hybridization on the bats. Sam again activates Camellia, trying to take John an extra out, but is met with a Stroke of Midnight from John, attempting to remove the bats. Sam is prepared, however, activating Pippin to sacrifice 4 food, giving his creatures +3/+3 in haste, but more importantly triggering Confectioner to make 8 rats, Camellia to make 8 squirrels, and the bats to make each opponent lose 20, taking out John an extra, removing the removals from the stack. Gadriel finally resolves, making 2 more food, followed by a final Camille activation, sacrificing a food, triggering Confectioner, Camellia, and the bats one final time to finish off Tom and declare himself the biggest food collector.